Hello, and welcome to Balance, Love, and Kindness, the podcast brought to you by BLK Water. We're at Studio Place LA. I'm your host, Nicole Townend, and we're joined here today with entrepreneur, author, and founder of GlowSea, Lori Harder.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
It's so fun to have someone interview me.
I feel like you're always on a podcast, whether you're being interviewed or you're interviewing someone else.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, I do a lot of interviews, but it's always so fun when I'm like, oh my gosh, you have to think of the question.
Yeah, I think it is more fun to be on your side, actually, because you can just
I didn't have to
roll
prep
off the
for
cuff.
it. This is so great.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I met you at another podcast, a live filming of Coffee and a Good Vibe. That was such a great night.
It was so fun.
Yeah,
Okay, so she didn't I had never been to one.
Okay.
And she's like, hey, you should come to this live podcast. And she kind of underplayed it a little bit. You know, she's just so humble.
Yes.
And so I'm thinking I don't know, because I'm looking at the photos from the last one. I'm like, yeah, maybe 50 people or something. And all of a sudden, hundreds of people literally show up, and it's all people that I follow online. And I'm like, what is going on?
The turnout was incredible.
Yes.
It was like a Wednesday night.
Totally. And it was
Hollywood.
totally people who I've never met that I follow.
Yeah.
I've followed online
Yeah.
for years. And I was like, oh, so should I be nervous? All of a sudden my body was like, you should be nervous. So
I felt like you were so relatable. I think you even said that on the podcast, that you felt nervous and that you saw the people. And that just made everybody kind of calmer, maybe, because there were people on the panel who've exited companies and they just had so much knowledge about consumer products. And you're like, well, I'm just getting started on mine. And
okay.
and then the people in
guy up here.
Yeah. And then there's people in the audience who are just getting started too.
Totally.
So that's kind of my first question. What is your best advice to people who are wanting to get into being an entrepreneur and they just don't know where to get started? I feel like that's a common question.
Well, the big things start small. And so you have to give yourself permission to start really small. And when I say small, I mean you are, if you have an idea and you want to do something and try it out, get 3 of your friends together, or get 3 people that you say, hey, I'd love to try this. Would you ever be willing to come for coffee and chat about it, or come over to my house and try this thing, or whatever that looks like. Of course, you want to semi-know the people or have a relationship. But I don't think people realize how small things start. They look at, maybe they look at the live podcast that we were just at, and with hundreds of people and, all these influencers, and they think, oh, if I'm going to do that and have a live podcast, that's how it has to look. Well, I've had a live podcast. Guess how small it started? With 20 people in a very small room, and it rocked, and it was awesome, and it could grow from there. But I've always been, I think that has been a superpower of mine, is to let it be okay, to let it be really small, and to be a beginner in front of people, because I'm really aware that when you are first establishing your people who are gonna know, like, and trust you and love you and follow you and help create that other community, that it does start extremely small like that. And it's one person at a time, with you having kind of these higher touch moments, and it just spreads slowly. I think people think that it's going to be, oh, I want to be here in a year, when really you have to think in terms of more a 5 to 7 year span.
So true.
And that's really the way that we should be thinking, is instead of this is where I want to be in a year, it's okay, let's actually say, where do we think we could be in 3 years, and then 5 years? Because the beginning of a startup is the first year, you typically don't even launch things. It's you're just in it. By year 2, maybe you have something rolled out. And year 3, you're just maybe understanding really who you are in the world and starting to like form a community. It's crazy.
So how many years to this product?
I mean, it started as something else. Okay. So if we start from the beginning of that, it would be 3, because I started raising money in the pandemic. But really, to this product, from idea to out in the world, it has been, I think, a little over a year.
Okay. And that's even kind of fast, probably because you have the resources and the knowledge now.
It's because I had kind of started a lot of things from the last company that it pivoted from. So that gave me like the foundation and the team and all of that stuff. Otherwise, I think it would have been 2 years.
Community was a huge takeaway from the last podcast. Shout out to Aisha. And you made me think of something. Do you think it's better, and maybe there's pros and cons to it, but to start a brand alone or to start it with someone else? Because you mentioned going to coffee with a couple friends. Are you saying to ask them to do it with you or to just get their advice?
I think in the beginning, until you know who you would need as a partner, unless you're clear on the partner that you want, I would start alone until you're clear. Because a lot of times what happens in the beginning is that we tend to partner with people who have like skill sets as us and like personalities. And when you are taking on a partner, you actually really want them to have totally different skill sets than you and even a different way of thinking and going about things. So I think if I were to have taken on, and I actually, it's funny, it's totally fine. It's announcing on Friday, but nobody knows it yet. You guys will be the first to know, but this will be released later. But I took on a co-founder and it's being announced Friday.
How exciting.
And I'm so glad that I waited until I knew who I was within the company, what my skill sets were best used to the highest good of the company. And then also just like what the company needed outside of me. And who is that other person that could come in who could bring such a high like assets and skill set that it would save us a lot of money either in like back end or marketing. Or I'm just so glad I waited so that I was really clear. Otherwise I did dabble in it in a co-founder early on and we would have like been doing the same thing.
Right.
And then we would have resented each other because it would have been two people who want to be out on the podcast and who want to be out creating community. And it'd be like, okay, but who's holding down the fort or creating our structure or who's like making sure that we have all these systems in place. And now that's what I have as somebody who's so good with strategic and the systems and all of that stuff.
I think even with raising money, get it from someone strategically.
Yes,
rather
totally.
than just anyone that's willing to give you money.
For sure. I totally agree.
Yeah. That's a really great point. So what about with your husband? You mentioned he's starting an app and he has a partner. Did he start it with the partner or how did that work?
He started with the partner because he already knew what his skill sets would be in this, and then he knew the guy, so he knew what his skill sets would also be.
Right.
So they had really like I wasn't that clear. He just was like way more clear than I was. Where this was like I didn't even know what the product was fully going to be out in the world. It's almost like you have to put your minimum viable product out into the world. You're like, okay, this is the idea. It might need to change. I'm not sure, but we just need to get something out. So for him, he knew from the start, like what role he was going to play and that he needed Matt, his co-founder.
So tell us about the product, Glow-C.
Okay. So Glow-C is a skin routine you can drink. It's a daily beauty supplement. So it's just for anyone who can't see us right now. It's just a powdered stick that you shake into water. And it really came from me looking at my hydration packets going, wait a minute, this just seems like really expensive salt and sugar. Like, I just wish this would do more. Like, so then I was honestly staring at this packet going, if I could have my hydration packets do other things for me, like what exactly would I have it do? And so I went into a couple different groups. I actually went into some friends groups who have like thousands and thousands of women. One of them being
that's cool,
the Boss Babe group, which Natalie Ellis actually is the co-founder who is coming into Glow-C.
Oh my gosh, how perfect is that?
So excited. We're super excited. So, which is funny because we didn't even think of it at the time. And so I went into her group to do the survey on like, what would you want this stick to do? And so we knew what we wanted it to do, but we were like, we also want to hear what they would want it to do. And women kept writing like they felt bloated. They felt heavy in their body, like they weren't digesting their food. They wanted their skin to be hydrated. They wanted their skin to glow. And like, no joke, like 5,000 very similar comments of what they would want.
Wow.
And so we were like, well, they made this pretty easy because we want the same thing.
Yeah, how smart.
We just went down and went down the rabbit hole of talking to formulators, doctors, dermatologists, like on what those ingredients would be that we think it could really help. And so we went the route of less ingredients with more of that ingredient in it so that it would actually be the impactful amount. So instead of putting like 40 ingredients that could help your skin or do whatever, we were like, what if we took the ingredients that we know, especially with the probiotic we use that has 30 clinical studies, we were like, what was the amount they used in those studies? So we know that we're going to get that result. So we used the amount that was used in the studies so that we knew we were going to get a result. So we're excited about it.
And that is so important because did you hear about the whole like lawsuit that's going on with Poppi probiotic soda?
No.
They're just saying, I'm not sure who brought the claims up, but you have to drink like 4 of the sodas in order to get the amount of probiotics. So really, who's drinking 4 of those a day?
Right.
You know? So you've got what you need in the stick. That's amazing.
Yeah, to be able to, and the supplement world is getting more and more, it's just getting more and more strict. So you really want to, number one, you want it so that you get the actual result and people stick to it.
Right.
Because
they want to drink it every day.
Exactly.
This is delicious.
Good.
It's very
I'm so
subtle
glad.
too. It's not.
Yeah.
Because some hydration packets are like, ding, they're just so sour or
Yes.
too much stevia or whatever.
And that's the feedback we got back too, is that the woman that we're really like, that we're going for is she's already kind of interested in health. And that flavor palette is less like I need all the flavor and, you know, all the things.
Yeah.
They're a little more like used to things tasting obviously more natural. And so that's how I feel is I didn't want it to taste like fake or like, oh my God, what is this? So that's
Zip
great.
Fizz or whatever.
Yeah,
It's just
totally.
too much, too strong. Yeah, very yummy.
Good. I'm so glad.
We definitely need to do like a giveaway of the 2 things of BLK and
Oh, let's do it.
OC and
We're doing it.
part of your daily regimen. So good.
I'm so glad you like it. Yeah, I was crazy about it because you have to want to go back to it. And that's
Right.
one thing we've learned about just supplements in general because we've come from a, health and wellness past. If it's too pungent, you'll like it in the beginning, but then you won't keep going back to it. And so I'd rather have it be subtle so that you feel like it's something you could keep drinking every day.
So tell me more about the ingredients because you said prickly pear, and I know I've heard of that, but what does that do for you?
So the actual name for it, or it's called Nepal cactus. Like that's its like sort of ancient-y plant name.
Okay.
But prickly pear is actually used in a lot of like hangover remedies because it's actually a prebiotic fiber. So it's got a lot of fiber in it. It helps with like bloating, and bloating is one of the main things, but it has a lot of different nutrients in it.
So cool. Yeah, I love the bloating aspect just because it's more like curing the gut, right? Or untangling the gut.
The probiotic helps with that. Just being hydrated helps with that. The fiber helps with that. So many people, so we used to eat a lot of fermented foods because we didn't have refrigerators. So your body actually that's what you need. You actually need obviously fermented foods and probiotics and prebiotics, but we've gotten so far away from it that we have to substitute them. Like we have to supplement it.
I need to start fermenting foods in my kitchen. I like save all those things off Instagram and
I know, that's the whole thing. Is I really want to start fermenting foods,
Yeah.
but I haven't yet. So
Yeah,
I was
exactly.
like, let's put it in the stick.
that's easier. I also
Yeah.
want to like make sourdough from scratch
Same.
and all these things. But
I have sourdough dreams. Like, I want to be that girl.
I do.
Like, I want to, what do you call them? Oh, that's my starter.
The
Like, I want
starter.
to talk about the starter to people.
I just made bread and I felt so proud and it was so good. But
Yeah.
it wasn't as complicated as the whole starter thing.
Yeah.
And that alone was such a mess. And it was so much work for just a little bit of bread.
Maybe when we meet again, we'll be starter girls.
Yeah, okay. Maybe that could be like our summer goal or something.
I'll be like, you go away and do sourdough. I'll go away and do mine, and we'll chat about it.
I
when we
did
come back.
YouTube it and it's like doable. You know, it's not that
Okay.
hard.
Okay.
We could figure it out. This episode of Balance, Love, and Kindness, the podcast, is brought to you by BLK Water. Did you know it's black because of fulvic and humic minerals? Fulvic acid has been considered a god molecule in Ayurvedic medicine for thousands of years for its healing properties. It's amazing for gut health, cell detox, natural energy, electrolytes, hangover prevention, and your hair, skin, and nails. Find us on Amazon or your local grocery store. Use our store locator to find an Erewhon, Whole Foods, Publix, or Target near you that carries BLK and get your detox on today. So I want to learn more about like your career past and how did you become such a force in the like talking about money and being an author and all that. Like where did you start out?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so how did I do that? I think it just came in these tiny little increments. I mean, I've been doing this for a very long time. So when people hear like, oh, you've done all the things. Yes, over 20 years, I have done all the things.
Right.
So that's what you have to remember is like I think having a fitness background and starting working out as a really young kid, I grew up in an overweight family. So for me, I found working out because I was told I just had bad genetics and that I couldn't lose weight. So I was like, okay, at a young age, somehow I was like, I reject that statement and I'm going to try to figure this out. What had happened is I remember reading in fitness magazines, they would put their routines in there, like their daily, like, 8, from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m., whatever. And even though I realized it was all lies back then, it still helped me see that, like, okay, my family is not doing any of this. So maybe it's not bad genetics. I'm like, you guys have 3 meals. We have 42 by the time it's like 7 p.m. Like, we snack all day long. Like, we're eaters. It's just, that's who we were.
Yeah.
It's super loving family, but just everything was like joy was food. Sadness was food, boredom was food. It's literally what we did. So I think that was the first realization of, oh, I think I have some control over this. And so got into fitness, but the foundation of fitness really taught me that, man, doesn't matter how consistent you are, things just take so much time. Like, I could be working out every day, but I may not actually change my body shape for a year. Mm-hmm. And I think that understanding that at a really young age, that results take a long time. I was never one of those people who was like, why isn't this happening yet? I just understood, well, something has to be happening because I'm not living the same way. So something has to eventually be changing. And I clung to that. And I feel like if people listening to this can understand that, that's if people want the secret is understanding that results take a really long time. And if you don't quit, you will lose everyone else on the path because everyone quits. Like, I remember when I first moved to LA, my husband and I were having a conversation because so many people like didn't show up to like a coffee appointment or wouldn't show up to like a podcast. Like, everybody canceled all the time. And I was like, wait, so you're telling me all we have to do here to win in life is show up and like be on time or as close to on time as possible. And it's just like this crazy moment of going, there's so many people who don't show up. And if you just keep going, you will eventually get a result that you want.
Yeah, I heard something about how just being comfortable, obviously that's great, but that's not going to do anything for us. So just seeking that comfort all the time, I feel like that's why people don't show up because they're tired. They didn't, they're overcommitted or something like that. But it really is just the consistency of doing what you say you're going to do.
Yeah, totally.
So how did that turn into then being an author?
Oh, well, let me see. Okay, so the author came because the book is called A Tribe Called Bliss. And I think that it wasn't just like I want to be an author. It was like I want to write about this topic. Mm-hmm. And so, I was from a really small town and I was raised in a religious background, but in the religion, I wasn't allowed to hang out with anyone outside of the congregation. So it took a small town and it made it even smaller. So when I was 18 and realized I didn't want to be a part of that religion anymore and left, it meant leaving everyone behind. So they couldn't associate with me anymore. So it's like I had to go find another group of people. Mm-hmm. Well, I didn't find like a great group of people right away. In fact, I found a really crappy group of people and, drinking, drugs, all of the things for a while. And it was probably like when I was like 20 years old, I just kind of kept feeling like your soul doesn't leave you alone. Like, it's like, I need to do something, or I know there's more than this. Like, this is not the life path for you. And thankfully, I slowly started following that and realizing like, hey, this group of friends is not great. Like, I have to figure this out. And I end up meeting my husband at a pretty young age. I met him at 21. And I think that was one of the first things that really helped me to like transition out of that life into my new life, because he was really supportive. He was just like, he was the first person to see more in me and like call me up to it. Mm-hmm. Like, he called me out all the time. And I hated him for it. And so I would say that the book came on the heels of like, it came much later after that, but it was based on knowing how important it is to have the right people in your circle in order to become who you need to become. Because there's a couple things. Your environment is stronger than your willpower, and your environment is the people in it. It's what's in your house. It's who's around you. It's who's in your circle. And no matter what, it's the reason why our parents always said, don't hang out with that bad kid. You'll become them. Well, I also realized that if you hang out with the group of really great people, you become them. So putting that together made me want to write a book about how can we make sure that we find those people, create those groups, whether it's slow or whatever that looks like, or maybe we have to go pay to be in rooms around those people, but it will still accelerate where you're at, because we have to be in rooms with people whose reality is our dreams. We have to find those people. And so it's going to collapse time. It's going to accelerate where you want to go. It's going to call you up. But the thing is, they're afraid to get in those rooms. And that's another part of the discomfort, is like, you just have to, like, for a short period of time, deal with the pain of feeling, am I worthy? Do I have any value to add? Can I go in this room? Am I good enough? Like, that never ends. That never ends for me. It's like every room you walk in can, especially as you start to grow a lot, or you start to, put yourself in these situations, every room could feel that way. And I always think if you're not feeling that way, that's when you should worry. That's when maybe your bank account is starting to go down. That's when you're starting to go, I don't know what to do. I don't have any ideas. Trust me, if you get in rooms that make you nervous, there's none of that happening.
That's such good advice. And I need to read your book now, because I have a teenager and I'm telling her all the time, like, you can't change the people around you, but you can change the people around you.
For sure. That's the best.
Yeah.
That is the best.
And she's not listening, but
yeah.
So your book was super successful, and then you started a podcast 15 years ago? Or
No, the podcast was 2016.
Wow. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And tell me how you started that, because I feel like you were like one of the first people to the game.
So I loved listening to podcasts. I think Lewis Howes came in 2 years before me, and I was a runner. So 6 miles, like 3 or 4 times a week, I was like, I'm going to listen to podcasts. It was like, I listened to him, and then Gabby Bernstein didn't have a podcast, but she had her lectures. So it was like between her and him. It's all I listened to. And I just had these moments of like, social media I want to communicate more with my people, like my audience, but I didn't love like blogging. That was kind of a bigger thing at the time. I didn't love like writing, and social media felt like it didn't have enough context. Like I want to tell more of the story. Like it's really hard to tell personal stories in, however many words we're allowed to say on social.
Yeah.
And so I wanted a place for more long form. And also I remember hearing a speaker, oh my gosh, it was Ty Lopez. I was at an event, and Ty Lopez had said at the time, he was like, okay, so in order for a customer to buy from you, it's going to take 7 hours of them like seeing you, like I think it was like for high ticket or something. So I was like, 7 hours. Do you know how long 7 hours via social media post will be? Because each post takes like 30 seconds to a minute to read or something, and then stories. And I was like, but that's 7 podcasts. So what if I did podcasting and got all of these things and really became that person that people know, like, and trust? And that's really what I invest in for like my marketing and programs, and I sponsor it, meaning like the things that I sell are the things sponsoring it. And so that's what we did, and it worked out amazing. Obviously that took time, but it truly works. I think podcasting is one of the best things you can possibly do.
I was going to ask that. So even though it's more saturated now, do you still think that it's
I would start
amazing?
One in 3 years still, from the very beginning. So I just think that you have to make sure you're either entertaining, vulnerable, interesting, I think you can win in podcasting still, because here's how I want you to think about it. If you could get, let's say you do 1 podcast a week to start, and let's say you only have 100 people listening, like that's not too hard to get to. Would you like pay to go and be able to say whatever you want and market to 100 of your perfect customer every single week? Like, what would that cost for them to tune in for 30 minutes to 60 minutes to you, to listen to something about your life and this product, and then become like raving fans and customers? All day long, I will do that for 100 people.
Right.
You know how far I travel to go speak to 100 of my ideal client, like for free? Because those could be lifers who end up staying with you for 1 to 7 to 10 years, who like the lifetime value of that person, meaning in your life, is so huge. So it's my whole like life is about the long game.
So if someone's not selling a product though, then they have a different business model with the podcast because they're just trying to entertain and then sell ads on the podcast, I guess. But that's with BLK, we're basically like, yeah, bring on the people that are going to teach about wellness and give like all this knowledge. Right. And then we'll take a sip of BLK. But yeah, I agree. It's like the best way to speak to your community.
Yeah. Definitely. And if you're going the ads route, I mean, that's totally different. That is a numbers play. Or you can be like, what product could I launch, even if it's a small e-course or something tiny? Like those are, it's funny because we have these friends who like started super small, didn't have a lot of success, and they're like, what is something we could offer? Like, like this tiny little marriage course that's like 2 pages. It's not like a marriage course. It's just helpful tips that they sell, and they sell it like crazy, like to people. So it's just thinking outside of the box of, even if you are doing just ads, like you should have your own product as well, meaning like whether it's a $20 PDF that you sell about some quick information on how to set up a podcast or something like that, where you can make some money yourself on the show.
Great advice. Such good advice. So what's next for you? Do you have more products coming out for Glow-C?
Girl, this is it right now.
Okay.
I am like so focused on making this work. We're not thinking of another SKU for at least a year. Okay. If that. We might stay a single SKU. We don't know yet.
Yeah, because it makes me think of Emergen-C. That's one product, really. I mean, they have different flavors.
Totally. I mean, look at AG1. That's like one singular product. Right. Like, I don't think that's their message.
That's their message, yeah. And then where can we find Glow-C?
It's at getglow-c.com. So it's GETGLOCI.com. Okay. Yes.
And are you going to be, is it always like a direct-to-consumer model? Or are you going to try to go?
Right now, we're going to stay direct-to-consumer. We just want to really nail this business model and not have our energy be everywhere else. I know that's so easy to get like sidetracked with like, ooh, this retail store, this could be amazing. But like, that's a whole other team. That's a whole other marketing plan. So now you're doing multiple marketing plans so we're just going to focus right here, even though we get very excited about things.
It's so true because Mark Cuban told me, I was on Shark Tank and I got him as a partner. And he would always say, no, just sell online. You don't need to go into big box. You don't need to pay to be in this catalog. And I was like, what are you talking about? I was getting these phone calls and I was so excited about it, but he was so right. It's just, you get the best margins and you're in control of everything.
And your focus doesn't feel so scattered.
Yes.
Like you feel like you're all moving in the same direction.
Yeah, even with BLK, distribution is a challenge. You know, we're in 36,000 doors. And that's what you have to be as a beverage, though. You
do.
Right? You can't just only be available on your website. People want to get it at the gas station. They want to get it wherever they go.
Right.
They get addicted to this, whatever drinks they like. But that's what's so nice about Glow-C is you can just bring it with you and throw it into.
Yeah, look at this perfect pair. You have it in
I know.
your water now.
I'm kind of obsessed with the duo.
It's great. Then it's like Blow-C for blow.
Blow-C. Oh my gosh. I love it.
That's funny.
I feel like every time I have someone on, I get really into if I believe in them, then I want to adapt that into my life. Like I had Melissa Bologna on and she was talking about bone broth.
Oh.
And she was saying all the benefits of bone broth. And I'm like, yes. And how it's helped her in all these different ways. And so now, of course, I want to drink bone broth every day because why wouldn't we?
I know. Bone broth is amazing.
It is. You forget about.
Great. I've got, two new things to add. Okay. Great.
You need BLK and bone broth and Glow-C. And
wait, couldn't we mix all three? Don't try that at home, everyone.
Yeah, I don't know about Glow-C in bone broth.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I don't think that the little lemon tang is going to be. No, it's not going to be good. Well, thank you so much for.
Thank you for having me. This was so fun.
And I feel like everybody already knows where to find you, but where can they find you?
Just Lori Harder on any of the social handles.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Lori.
Thank you. This was so great.